Hey, welcome back. This is Claudine, and today we're painting some of my favorite desserts, an ube cake roll. This is the finished piece. Ube cake roll, cinnamon roll, pumpkin pie. It's giving autumnal and cozy. And I'm using this mixed media pad from Canson. You can use whatever paper you want. So what I did was I ripped this out and I cut it down to 8.5 by 11. And I printed out this outline that I actually drew out, which you can download for free yourself. So you can just sit down, paint with me. We'll go step by step together. Or you could just relax and watch. So I'm just gonna pin this down so it doesn't move around. And let's go over some supplies. So the supplies I have, I think the absolutes that you should have are your favorite gouache. We're working with gouache today because I feel like it's very forgiving, very beginner friendly. Your favorite brushes, I'm using 2 different brushes today. I have the 10 round from Princeton Heritage. These brushes are so good. They're my favorite at the moment. And I also have this flat brush from Princeton Heritage. It's the 1/4 inch stroke and it looks like this, but you can absolutely use whatever brush you want. I have a cup of water and a rag to paint off or to wipe off my paints with. If you're using this gouache brand and it's a little dry, you can just use a spray bottle and just spray everything. This is completely optional, but at the very end, we're gonna use the micron to outline with, and we're gonna use this Posca fine tip paint marker to add in highlights, but you can absolutely just use your gouache to do the final outlines and all the fun stuff in the end. Also, this is optional. I have this paint knife. You can use a spoon or a regular whatever flat thing you have lying around like a popsicle stick, just so we can scoop out paints and mix it on the side without contaminating the other colors. And don't mind me, I'm just gonna chat as we paint. So if you don't wanna hear me yapping, just turn the mute button on, okay? And just paint along. All right, so we're gonna start with this purpley color right here. I'm gonna hold it up. This is gonna be the base of our ube, this right here. Because I'm just gonna use that color, I don't need to dip it in, or I don't need to use my paint pen, my paint knife. I'm gonna use my favorite brush, my round brush, and I'm just gonna dig right in there. And I will just paint all along the side, or the entire ube cake roll actually. And I'm gonna leave these dollops of cream on top. And I'm actually going to paint right over this swirl. Because gouache is so forgiving, you can actually paint over a darker value or darker color like purple. And it'll be in that white, let's say you paint white over it, it's gonna show through. And that's what I love about gouache. That's why we're painting with it today. So a little story time. When I was 6, we actually immigrated from the Philippines. We moved to Northern California, specifically the Bay Area at first. And that's where I was introduced to Bob Ross's videos. We also moved to Sacramento from the Bay Area, but we would go back and forth to the Bay Area and Sacramento. But during those times, I would kind of stay up a little. And looking back, I don't think it was that late because staying up for us back then was like 10 p.m. But I would stay up and PBS was on and Bob Ross was on. And he was just so, I guess for me, like 6-year-old me, I was so entranced. And my grandparents and parents would say like, yeah, you were locked in every time Bob Ross would come on. So right now, I'm kind of just doing a very medium wash, or like a medium thick wash over the entire body of the cake roll. I want it to feel like, because we're using this, this jelly gouache, the texture is way different than, let's say, the gouache that you would squeeze out of the tubes, like the ones that I currently use, which are the Holbein gouaches. This one is definitely on the like thicker side as it applies. So the texture that I'm kind of going for is kind of like honey, if that makes sense. Like a slightly runnier honey. I'm just covering everything in between. Not worried about being perfect with this either. So right down there. This is why I like using this round brush, because it could get right into the nooks and crannies of this cake roll. And with gouache, I kind of like starting with a subject that's furthest away in the background because it's easier to paint on top of gouache. I mean, you could do whatever you want, but this is what I choose to start with. And also, you don't have to do this printable download because you can also draw it out however you'd like. Okay. So now that's filled out, we're gonna darken this side. I'm thinking that the sun or the light source is coming from this way. So we're gonna make it darkest over here. I'm just gonna wash out my brush and dry it off on my towel. I'm just gonna get a little bit more water just at the tip of my brush. And I'm gonna grab some of this like dark blue, this dark blue color right here. And I'm gonna get plenty of it. So this will go in the darkest parts of the cake roll because it's hiding from the sun. I'm gonna go right in here. I actually did this whole painting for an in-person workshop that I did in Orange County recently. And it was so fun, but I was so exhausted at the end. I definitely bit off more than I could chew because I should have only painted just the ube cake roll for everyone. It was only supposed to be a 30-minute workshop, and it turned out to be a whole hour, back to back to back, 3 times. So it was like just 3 hours of me straight yapping. So when I get to the edges, I kind of use the point of my brush right here, just so I can outline it. So I can make that line. And I want to create kind of a glow from within, like how you can see here in the cake roll, just so you could see that it's still purpley. And what I love about adding this dark blue on top of this purple is that it really enhances the purple. I'm still trying to get better at color theory. I feel like it was not my strongest suit as an artist growing up. And the biggest lesson I learned about color theory recently is like, it really doesn't matter what color you use. It's just all about the relationship of the colors that you lay down next to each other. All right, so I kind of like did this stripy thing going down the cake roll, and I'm just gonna dry out my brush a little bit more. And I'm gonna use the pointy part of that brush to just dab and stipple that in. So it kind of gives it that texture of a cake roll. And I kind of lost some of that purpley base at first that we lay down first, so I'm just going to completely wash out my brush, put a bit of water on the tip, get some of that initial like kind of this like light purpley pink color, And I'm gonna use that same dabbing motion just in the center, just to introduce some more lightness in the side of that cake roll. And I don't know if you guys have had any ube desserts before, but it is popular in Southeast Asia, and it's been native to the Philippines for a very long time. And I've been making content here and there, just like some short videos about like what ube is. And ube is often mistaken for purple taro. So whenever you go to a bakery or an Asian inspired dessert shop, it's usually not ube that you're getting when they advertise ube. Ube is like very rich, deep purple. All right, I'm getting more of that dark blue at the tip of my brush, and I'm actually gonna outline the edges of the face of the cake roll. And also, every painting, every artwork will have an ugly phase. So don't worry if yours is looking a little whack right now. I wanted to let this whipped cream just kind of hang off the edge, so I drew this out. We're eventually going to paint over it because that purple is covering the cream. And I'm going to dry out that brush a little bit more, and I'm just going to do little stipples. There's barely any color left from the blue on this brush. I'm doing those stipples with my round brush to give, again, that illusion of a cake roll, because a cake roll is very spongy. Cool. We will revisit you later. Don't worry. We will. All right, let's move on to the pumpkin pie. At this point, you're probably like, well, wait, the cake roll isn't done. Don't worry. We just need to let it dry. That's why I'm kind of leaving it alone. Okay, so for the cake roll, I'm gonna go for the crust first. Let's do the pie crust first. And I'm going for this kind of mustardy yellowy, almost like it has a brown undertone to it. So I'm gonna get plenty of that loaded onto my brush. I don't know if you could see that. And I'm just gonna paint the entire pie crust with it, being pretty generous. I don't want this to be too watery. And if you've never worked with gouache before, it's good to just have a test paper on the side. I'm sorry, I should have said that in the beginning. But it's all right. As long as you get this notebook, you'll have lots of sheets of paper and you could always redo it. And it sounds heartbreaking when you're like, I have to redo my artwork. I'm not telling you to redo your artwork. You can always work with what you have. But I noticed one lesson that I learned from this workshop was I had to do the same piece over and over again. And the thought of starting over another piece was kind of heartbreaking for me at first, because I was like, oh wait, the first one looked much better than I expected, and I wish that's what I could show people. But then I realized as each piece went on, I got better and better at it because there was that muscle memory and there was just more confidence with the strokes. So I'm filling in this piece right here, just the pie crust again. And this is why I like this rounded brush. It's so precise. It's one of the best brushes I've used for gouache. It's nice to invest in just better quality art supplies because it just makes your practice so much more enjoyable. All right, so that pie crust is filled out. I'm gonna wash off my brush, dry it off, and now I'm gonna kind of darken this area a little bit right here. So now I'm gonna grab this color right here, right next to that mustardy yellow. It's almost like a burnt sienna. I don't know, don't take my word for it. It just looks like a very rich orangey brown. It kind of reminds me of like a chocolatey caramel. Now I'm just gonna paint right over the bottom part of the pie crust towards the edge, because this side is not showing towards the sun. The top part of the crust is showing to the sun. And I'm just kind of adding some texture. So the texture I'm adding are these short strokes, because it's gonna make it look pie crusty. You know what I mean? I don't know what pie crusty means. We just want to make it look kind of crusty. Speaking of pies, I love the Costco pies. The pumpkin pies are huge, and they're only like $5 at this moment. I don't know where the pie crust is gonna go, or the pumpkin pie prices are gonna go. This is not sponsored by Costco. Why would... Well, you know what? You never know. Costco may sponsor me one day. Who knows? I'm taking a bit of that brown and I'm just lining it right behind my whipped cream, because we want to give it that shadow on the crust from the whipped cream. So I'm kind of just following the shape of that whipped cream, how it rounds right here. And it's just going to trail off right here, the edge of the pie crust. And you can also use the tip of that brush to take the remaining color to add little dots. Ooh, so cute! Add little dots on the top part of that pie crust. And it just gives it even more of that crustiness to it. Okay. At this point, you can stick with this brush, or you can move on to your flat brush. The flat brush just makes it a lot easier to work with sharp edges like this triangle on this pumpkin pie. The top of the pumpkin pie is going to be lighter than this edge right here, because again, it's not showing towards the sun. So the color that we're going to go for is this bright, like golden yellow right here. So I'm going to take plenty of that, load up my brush. Ooh, that's a little thick. Oh well. And I'm just going to paint it on everywhere, because that's going to be the light for the pumpkin pie. The light of the base. I guess that's one lesson too that I learned from painting a lot more recently, because I used to just sketch a lot more. A lot of graphite sketches. I was more comfortable with drawing like shapes and form, but color was never my strong suit. But with painting a lot more recently, I realized that it's a lot easier for me to figure out different colors to go into my painting when I think of what the color of the light will be. And for this, I kind of want the light to almost be like this bright yellow, like bright white yellow. So if you could pretend that there was a light source coming from the left side of this artwork, it'd be this like bright yellow. And you can choose other colors that go with that bright yellow. And again, it just takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of looking at reference pictures. Also, this tip I heard was, just go out and look at stuff in nature, because those colors that you see occurring in flowers and fruits, there's a reason why they're together, because they're just so harmonious. I think it's kind of beautiful. Kind of beautiful that nature does that. Okay, now that the entire pumpkin pie has been painted, I'm going to wash off this brush. And now I'm going to go in with this like reddish orange right here. I'm going to wet my brush a little, and I'm going to grab some of that reddish orange, and that's what's going to darken the side of my pie. I'm gonna go right here, and I'm just gonna go for these long strokes, giving that pie more dimension. I think that's all it is really, is that think of color as dimension. You're adding dimension, and a darker value like orange would look more like a shadow for this bright golden yellow. Ooh, I kind of like these blocky streaks that this brush is giving. And it doesn't have to be perfect either, because I feel like the texture gives it a lot more life, right? So I'm going to take just a little bit more of that color, or there's barely any color left, and I'm going to, again, create that shadow right behind that whipped cream and around it, very lightly, and maybe just on the edges, wherever you feel like it. Give it more dimension, give that whipped cream more life, I guess. And there's, again, barely any color left from that reddish orange on this brush, but I kind of want to give the pumpkin pie at the top like some streaks at the top, just to give it that illusion of texture, like that barely there color texture, because it's just gonna darken that yellow a little bit more to make it look more like pumpkin pie. Okay, I'm going to wash this off, and I'm going to move on to my round brush. Again, we're going back to these pieces, to the ube cake roll and the pumpkin pie, because again, you might be freaking out right now, but let's just let them dry, let them settle down. All right, now we're gonna go back to that same color that we used for the base of the pie crust. Remember that like mustardy color? We're gonna load up our paintbrush with that, and we're just gonna paint the base of the cinnamon roll. Just filling in that entire body. So cinnamon roll. I got into sourdough baking like pretty intensely within the last couple years. And cinnamon rolls, I learned how to make them into sourdough form. And it's so good. I think it's just different because it's different from the normal cinnamon rolls I've had, because you have to wait for that fermentation process. Because with regular cinnamon rolls, you do have to wait for them to kind of just rise, for the dough to rise whenever you're, whenever you wait during the baking process, or before you have to bake, you have to let it rise. But for cinnamon rolls that are made out of sourdough, you have to like wait quite a while, and that fermentation process gives the sourdough, gives a cinnamon roll. It honestly doesn't taste very sourdoughy, but it makes it chewier. Maybe I'm tripping, but it tastes chewier. It's a lot softer, and I just enjoy it a lot more than regular cinnamon rolls that, you know, you'd find elsewhere or that you'd bake from a can. So you should try it out. I forget who. I think it was like, I forget which site I got the recipe from, but it was delicious. Okay, once the base of that cinnamon roll has been put down, you're gonna take that same like burnt sienna color. So we're basically using the same pie crust colors, and we're just going to make, so at this, I would say like the right third of that body of the cinnamon roll, I'm gonna make a slight like backwards, or like a parentheses, right? Like the outer parentheses, the latter parenthesis sign, and we're just going to paint that outer third with this darker value, because we're giving it the illusion of roundness because of the light source. it's all about light source. If you want to give the illusion of roundness, I guess, always darken one side in that C curve. And then you can stylize this however you want. You can go soft with a line, or you can gradually fade it out. But I kind of like the hard line. And I'm going to take that little bit of color left on that brush, and it's going to be just a little different from my previous iterations. I'm just going to start stippling, so it gives it, again, that illusion of breadiness. And I'm taking it all the way to the edge, that left edge. And I'm kind of on the side of my brush, but focusing on that tip. And as I stipple, that color, that dark color, eventually fades off. So you're barely gonna get any all the way to the left. And if you want it to be just a little darker, wash off your brush. And I'm gonna take just a little bit of this darkest brown right here. So this darkest brown kind of reminds me of like a dark chocolate right here. And I'm just loading the tip of my brush. And I'm gonna go on this side of the cinnamon roll. And if it's just a little too dark, I don't like it too dark, wash off that brush and just use a clean brush to just slowly spread this out. And I'm going in that C. That C shape. Just a side note, this is so much more relaxing to edit. I can already tell the editing process is so much more relaxing than my short videos for painting, because I feel like when I'm editing for short videos, the painting process is so much longer than obviously like a minute, right? But for this, I can actually relax because you can see all the little details that I'm putting down. Okay, there you go. So that's done. I actually want to take a little bit of that brown, just a teeny bit, like a little bit, and I'm going to go down in that pie crust below it and give it a little bit more texture. So I'm kind of just doing that sideways, so that brush is on its side, and I'm giving it a little bit of texture by doing like short, draggy strokes, focusing on the side and the tip of the brush. There. Beautiful. Wash off that brush. We're gonna go back to that cinnamon roll. Welcome back, cinnamon roll. I mean, not cinnamon roll. Not the cinnamon roll, sorry. Wait, no. We are gonna be focusing on the cinnamon roll still. Alright, so now you're gonna take that clean brush, or you can take a palette knife because it's easier. Take that palette knife. I don't know why I wet my palette knife. Get some of that white. So get some white out of there. Oh, it's lifting off. Get a more cooperative white. Okay. And then you're gonna take this much white, hope you can tell, and you're gonna wipe it on your palette on the side. Wash off that paint palette or paint knife. I keep wanting to call it a palette. Wipe it off on your towel, and then you're gonna grab just a teensy bit of that mustardy yellow, probably like this much, because now we're gonna imitate frosting. And you're just gonna mix it on the side. That way you don't contaminate the other colors in your paint wells. I'm gonna wash that off. and wipe it. So I don't know if you could see, but now you have this like creamy, like this creamy beige color. Take that round brush again. If the paint's a little dry, just put in a bit more water in your brush. Take that color and you're going to drizzle that frosting all over the cinnamon roll. Yum! This is my favorite part in a cinnamon roll, especially that cinnamon roll. If you've ever baked cinnamon rolls and you get that cinnamon roll right in the middle of the pan, it's just so soft and fluffy compared to the rest. I've just always been a middle-bred girly. So fun fact, growing up, when it was just my sister and I, before our 3 other little siblings came into this world, we always split bread, and we always said it was a great match, I guess. Like, us siblings were just so opposite sometimes, but so similar in certain ways, that she would always get the crust of the bread, because I don't know why she loves the crust, but I guess she loves the crust, which is funny because my husband loves the crust of the bread. And I love the soft inside part of the bread. It's just so fluffy. And that's my favorite part about cinnamon rolls, is like that middle area right here, when it just gets so soft and warm and fluffy. And in the ridges right here, you get more of that frosting. Oh my gosh. All right, you're going to wash off that brush as soon as you apply that entire creamy color on the frosting. And we're just going to darken that frosting a little bit within those ridges. So take that burnt sienna, whatever color, this browny caramelly color, and just right at the tip of your round brush, you're going to follow along the lines of the cinnamon roll swirl, but I'm actually only focusing on the right part. I'm not going towards the left too much. The left is going to be just a little lighter. And if it's too dark, if it's putting down too much color, just completely wash off your brush, dry it off on its side, and then just drag out whatever color you have that's already on your paper. I'm just going to pull it down here, and I'm going to take some of that color, bring it to the right side, because again, this is accentuating the color or the light source coming from the left. Again, you can tip your brush onto its side to use the pointier end, or the pointier tip of your brush. And I'm just going to follow the swirl as this paint lightens. Yeah. And then, because the light source is coming from the left, I'm going to take the remaining bit of color and just use that paint to follow along the drips of the swirls, but only on the right side of the swirl. The right side of the drips. Because what? Because of the light. There. Cool. Okay. Now wash off that brush. And then we're gonna do something a little funky. We're gonna use a little bit of this blue that we used for the darkest part of your ube. I'm only taking like the teeniest bit of this blue. I'm talking just a tiny dot, really. And I'm mixing that in with part of this cream color that we made on the side. So this cream color, I'm not going to completely put the blue in there. I'm just going to focus on the side. And I'm just going to make this like light, almost like a purpley creamy color, because now that's going to be the shadow for our cinnamon, I mean not for cinnamon, for our dollops of whipped cream. Because we don't want to highlight with black. We want to highlight with colors that go really well with what we've already laid down. So I'm going to take that color and I'm just going to focus on the bottom part of the swirl. I keep wanting to say swirl. Yeah, the bottom part of the dollops of whipped cream, because there's one on the pumpkin pie, and I'm just going to follow along the bottom edge, and I'm going to thicken that shadow towards the right side, because again, it's darker on this side than on this side. And I'm going to do the same thing for this dollop on top. I can kind of drag it more out from that outline. The outline, just use it more as a guideline. It's not a hard rule. Right there. And then I want to add in a little bit more of a flare. I'm focusing on that pointed tip, and I'm just going to add little dots here and there, because it gives it kind of a cute bounciness. I'm going to dry off this brush because a bit of that pumpkin pie color got onto the top part of that whipped cream dollop. I'm going to take some of that white and I'm just going to erase it. Goodbye. Bye-bye. There she goes. And away. Yay! There's a whipped cream. I'm going to take that same white and I'm going to cover up this frosting. My words are all wrong today. This dollop of whipped cream that's hanging off the edge of this ube cake roll. And don't worry if some purple comes onto the whipped cream. It's actually kind of nice. But if the purple gets a little too much, wash off that brush again, wipe off the excess water, get some more of that white, and then just dull it down with more white. And see how that purple just gradually disappears. And that purple gives it a nice shadow. Okay. Because again, we're working with relationships, right? It's like just relationships between color and light. Because that ube cake roll is purple, of course it's going to bounce off some purpley light on the whipped cream, so it kind of works pretty well. And I'm doing the same technique that I used on the whipped cream dollop on top of that pumpkin pie. I'm following the shape, and I'm just going to add little dots here and there. I'm going to go back to that color that we mixed on our palette and do the same thing, following along that shape of the dollop with cream, dots to stylize it, or whatever style you want. Grab a little bit more purple from there, add it to this whipped cream, and working on this last side all the way to the edge. Oop, dots right here. And then I'm gonna take, I kind of like dragging some color that I've used in the previous whipped cream dollop, or some of the side right here. So like even right here, don't freak out because we're gonna cover that completely in white. And I'm just gonna bring that very slight color onto the whipped cream dollops, because we want to add a little bit of purpliness to them, to the shadows. There you go. Okay, wash off that brush again, dry it off, or take off the excess water. Get a bunch of white at the tip of that brush. So this is how much white I got. And I'm gonna follow this swirl pattern that I covered up earlier. This is the cream that lives inside this cake roll. It looks so yummy. So it's basically a Swiss roll. If you've had a Swiss roll, it's really soft and fluffy and creamy. It's just so good. I love cake. It really is a gateway. It's like a gateway drug for me for desserts. Every time I eat any sort of cake or something creamy, it's over. That means I'm gonna start eating as if I don't have family members who have diabetes. Let's just say that. Just carefully following the swirl. This is the part where I feel like you have to be the most patient, because that color payoff with the white isn't too intense due to the purple color underneath, but that's why we could work in layers. And isn't that what's so cool about gouache? If this is your first time, how cool is it that you can just put a lighter color on top of this darker color and it shows through? You can't do that with watercolor. You just can't. Ah, look at that swirl. It's so pretty. You can leave it as is, because I do like that it kind of gives it that stylized, like those brush strokes. And that's also one thing I learned with just art that I love. I noticed that the artists who don't necessarily have, like neat lines, their brush strokes are just very confident. You can tell. If your brush strokes aren't confident, the people can tell. See how I added in just a little bit of that line back onto that cinnamon roll? Don't worry. Just wash off that brush, get a little bit more of that white, and kind of just like block it off like this and work back into that cinnamon roll. So this is the lightest part of that cream. I have some of that white, and I'm just working that all the way on the left side of the swirl to give it the illusion of more light coming this way. If you can't tell by this point, I love just bouncing around different subjects whenever I'm painting. Ooh. There's a little bristle that's sticking out. I gotta try out that, like, apparently there's this liquid that you could put on your brush to reshape your brush. Oh no, I don't know if my audio was recording this whole time. We will just roll along with it. If my audio turned off, I'm just gonna have to do a voiceover. It's okay. All right, taking more of that white paint right here, because I'm trying to just do this with minimal editing possible to make it, actually feel like real time. Because I feel like that's, it's so nice to just slow down, to have slowed down videos like that while everything else is so fast, like my other videos. Putting in more white. I'm just following along the line right here. Yay! It's starting to come along. Okay. Now, do you remember this color right here? I was going to use my Posca marker for this, but I kind of just want to use the rest of my white paint. So I'm going to take some of that white and I'm going to mix more in here, really getting more white in this creamy color. Okay, I'm gonna load up this brush and kind of roll it on the side so the tip has a lot more of this creamy white, and I'm just gonna make some highlights all along the sides of my painting. I'm adding little dots, make it a little bit more whimsical, and I kind of just like doing whatever in this part. The dots kind of just give it more, I don't know, it just makes it look tastier in my opinion. Dots here, focusing on the very tip of that brush. Maybe some dots right here. Yup. Cute. And then maybe covering this up more a little bit because that line is showing. There you go, that's much better. And then I like doing like little lines like this. It kind of gives it, what do you call that? It gives it more form. That makes sense? Like more direction to the piece. Like for instance, right here. Woo! There you go. I was like, I need to go and be confident with my strokes, or else the people can tell. Nice. Good strokes right there. Gonna do the same thing here. Big ol' highlights here. I like fat highlights. And then maybe some little dots. Nothing too crazy. Getting some more of that creamy white, loading it onto my brush. And then big dollop of highlight right here. Just following along the shape of the pumpkin slice. Okay, I like that. I'm kind of just following along the edge right here. Maybe little lines right there. Boom. Like that. Little dots. Then maybe more highlight here. Maybe some bigger dots right there. Cute! Okay. Wash this off. So at that point, you could have used like a white paint pen, and you could also use this micron pen or Sharpie. Now I'm just gonna take, I want to go for something like cozier. I don't want to paint with black, outline with black like I did with my previous one, so I'm gonna use this dark brown color, this chocolate, and I'm just gonna focus again on that very tip of the brush, and I'm just gonna outline everything. I'm kind of scared. Ooh. This is why having a good quality brush is so important. A slight outline there. Oh my gosh. Okay, outline right here. I know that there are already outlines printed out, but the color is gray and it's just a little different than I want. And sometimes I like to not complete the line all the way. Then maybe add in some dots here and there. This is what I mean by not completing the line. So let's say I have this cinnamon roll. I'm going to outline the bottom part of this cinnamon roll, but not all the way. Maybe add in a couple dots there, and then finish off right here. Kind of reminds me of Studio Ghibli, actually. And then do the same thing with the drips. ever so slightly, very careful. Then maybe some lines right here to follow along that cinnamon roll swirl. And I kind of just want to separate this cinnamon roll a little bit more from the ube cake roll, so I'm going to put a nice dividing line right there, right at the top. And then do the same thing with my pumpkin pie. If you're starting to run out of that brown color, just add more at the very tip, not too much. Unless you want it to be very dark and lay down a little thicker. Again, this is your painting. This is not my painting. This is yours, so you do whatever you want. Do the edge of this pumpkin pie. Then slight incomplete lines. I'm doing the same thing on the bottom. Nice quick stroke. A nice quick stroke here. Incomplete lines. Maybe one right here. Maybe one right here. Maybe right at the bottom of this whipped cream. Then maybe one right here. And then dots. You know me with my dots. Then maybe add some dots here on the cinnamon roll. Some more lines. Some defining lines to see the direction of the swirl. Dots here and there. More dots. And here we are. And we are finished. Was that easy? Was it enjoyable? It's crazy how everything just comes together towards the end, huh? And these are the other iterations, just to show you how everything is so different at the end. You're always gonna make different decisions with the same subject matter. So that's why it's good to just experiment and have fun, and don't freak out when something's not going perfectly, because you can always have other tries and other chances. Kind of like life, right? So this is it here, the final one. And these are the ones from before. All equally tasty looking, different decisions. Definitely mistakes were made in each one of them, but that's what makes them so pretty. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!